Straightsmile Solutions, straightsmilesolutions.com, and we're going to do yet another video on when to stop expansion. But this time I'm going to bundle it all in. We've got RPEs, which are your fixed. We've got IPEs, which is your Invisalign palatal, and your Schwartz. This is a 2.0 video. Definitely should listen to all my other videos. This is going to be pretty high level. I'm not going to go into super detail on each of these different appliances, case selection, lab slips, because I've got all that content. This is specifically going to be when to stop. So there's a bunch of factors you have to keep in mind, and I cannot tell you a set amount of turns. Now, of course, there's no turns on an IPE because that's 3D printed, but trays for them. So turns, trays. And a tray equals a turn, basically. It's about 0.25 millimeters of expansion per turn or per tray. So if you can do the math, if you have some idea about how much transverse deficiency you have, be it 6 millimeters, 7 millimeters, 4 millimeters, take that number, multiply it by 0.25, which is basically, right, 4. So if you know that you've got 4 millimeters of deficiency, you're going to need 16 turns, but you're actually going to need way more than that, right? Because you're going to always relapse about 20, 25, 30, 35%. It really just depends on how long you hold it there and how much of it actually ends up being tipping versus the actual expansion of the palate. And very often you need to do even more than you think if you're not addressing the lower, which is why I'm a huge fan of lower expansion. And yes, lower expansion is just uprighting curve of Wilson, just tipping teeth. But you have to upright that curve, because if you do not, you're going to not have enough space. So what are our goals for expansion, right? Airway, yeah, that's a general term. Obviously, evaluating the airway initially as a baseline through a sleep disorder breathing exam, and then evaluating it later. Sure, if you have a CBCT, you can do it that way. That's wonderful if you can do that, but not all of us can, and not all of us want to irradiate the patient. So, but there's a lot of snazzy practices that do that now. Wow, we made your airway this much bigger volume. That's great. You're going to have to do the lower in order to do that, because you're going to have to get the upper really, really, really wide. Ultimately, the goal is to be able to fix the crossbite, fix the vaulted palate, improve airway, get enough space for all the teeth to come in. How do you do that? Well, if the child is in mixed dentition, you're going to have to eyeball it, which means taking a lot of progress panel x-rays. I usually like to take the appliances out for that because I want to see the eruption lanes. If you want to know about eruption lanes, you can go into my channel, which is called Straightsmile Solutions, put in that keyword, eruption lanes. It's a video with a swimming pool, because my kids are swimmers, so we're really into swimming. So I like to think about things like that. But we want to see that there's lanes for all these additional teeth. They shouldn't be jumbled up. This does not have enough lanes, right? There's no space for this tooth to come in yet. You can see the space here. You can see how big this crown is. You can see the space here. You can see how big this crown is. We do not have enough eruption lanes. We definitely don't have enough eruption lanes on the lower. I mean, I'm not saying that the teeth are going to autocorrect, the ones that are already tipped, but there should be space for it to come in if it was straight, right? So you have to do, there's really no set way to do this. You have to kind of eyeball it, and it's okay to get more than you need. I mean, obviously we don't want to be getting them so big that they look like a giant bullfrog, just so wide. I mean, it needs to be somewhat reasonable. But if you have extra space, it can be closed later. It's better to have more space than less space. Now, if there's any crowding on the lower, and not doesn't even have to be crowding of the lower incisors, but you also have to have space for the canines. Yes, there's a little extra space back here, but we're not going to get there yet. So I'd rather get a little bit wider on the bottom so we have space for the canines to come up and space to align the front teeth. As long as I've got that space, then I know that this little extra space I'm going to get back here is great. We'll close it later. And even better if the patient's class 2, because we'll use that space and the teeth will migrate forward. So fantastic. It'll help to fix a class 2. So you got to expand the bottom in order to expand the top, unless you have gaps on the bottom, and then no need. But if you just have just enough space for these front 4 teeth, 22 through 26, lower 2 to 2 to be straight, but you don't have space for the canines, it's not enough. If you want an example of what it should look like, honestly, check out Invisalign's courses for phase 1. They're Invisalign First. They show you what an Invisalign First treatment plan should look like when it's done. Exactly what Invisalign's doing is what you should be doing. There should be space around the lower C's. There should be gaps on either side of the lower C's. They leave extra space around the lower C's, about 1.5 millimeters around each one. That's what I want to see. That's what you guys are most commonly doing wrong, is you're either not expanding the lower or you're not expanding the lower enough. And then your upper arch should be half a tooth wider than the lower arch, which you expanded. I mean, it should be almost in buccal crossbite, not in scissor bite, but almost in buccal crossbite, because you're going to relapse the top. You're also going to relapse the lower, but you're going to relapse the top a lot. So, and it's okay if you're a little bit wider, where those wires or the Invisalign will arch coordinate later. It's not a problem. Things will settle in. But do not take them to the point of actual scissor bite. Now, if you get lazy or cheap and you decide to only do the upper and not the lower when the lower is needed, you're going to end up in scissor bite and it's going to be a mess. That's why you have to do the lower at the same time as upper. And the most common mistake y'all are making is you're not doing the lower, you're doing the upper, and you're incompletely doing the upper, and you don't get enough space. And what's the point? I mean, yeah, you're going to get some improvement, but you're going to have to do it all over again, in phase 2, and the patient's going to get mad. So if you do this properly, really, and if there's no impactions and no already tipping teeth like this, a lot of time, I mean, this case is going to, of course, need phase 2 because we've got issues going on in the phase 2 zone. We got this. Those are issues. This is an issue. Top might have been fine if they had expanded it. But if you take a good case that is not major vertical issues, which you could address in phase 1, you could actually address any vertical issues in these initial appliances, but doesn't have a major AP issue. They have like a 1 or 2 millimeter and they don't need lower growth modification. You could totally address it just with some anchorage and space control in the phase 2 retention. But if the teeth are pretty upright and you expand them a little bit over the more you need and do good retention as needed, there's a decent chance they will not need phase 2. They will not need braces. They will not need Invisalign later as they get older. And if they do, it's just for minor cosmetic reasons in the back. I can't promise, because you can never predict the future. You've still got 16 more teeth coming in. Things can happen on one of those 16 teeth. Trust me, I know. But the odds are more in your favor that you might not need treatment. You might just need a new set of retainers that captures all the teeth. I can tell you it happened to my son. I couldn't believe it. He started off with 100% deep bite, 4 millimeter overjet. And we just did some nice phase 1. We had made him a set of retainers. Now I'll tell you the story if you haven't heard it. When he was about, done with his phase 1, I said, and the 7th came, I said, here's your new retainers. You got to wear these at nighttime so we can keep your really nice teeth that came in naturally straight. Perfect overjet, perfect overbite. I actually have photos of him somewhere on YouTube. That sucker, teenager, good luck with that. He's like, my teeth are great. I don't need anything. I said, they're going to shift. Trust me. What looks good now will not look good when you're 18. What happened? He was 18. His girlfriend told him to get Invisalign. So now he's got not a lot of trays. It's a super easy case, trust me. Class 1, overjet perfect, overbite perfect, just maybe 3 millimeters of crowding. Could have easily done this with white label aligners, but we just decided to do Invisalign because. And he's wearing them great. He's not going to need a refinement. It's going to be like 25, 30 trays. I mean, it's a slam dunk, easy ortho relapse case. I say relapse because it did relapse. It was perfect at one point. Frustrating that we had a lab fee on something we wouldn't have if he had worn his retainer, but he's actually very appreciative and he has a newfound appreciation for what I do. So, because he didn't listen to me. And it's a I told you so moment. So I said, you're very lucky that we do what we do because I would be a lot more mad otherwise. But yeah, so now he's going to perfect again. But yeah, that's pretty much it. There's your expansion guidelines. Hopefully that's helpful. Have a great 4th of July.